Now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gohmert, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. Last year, we had sent a letter to the Forest Service asking about boat ramps on Lake Sam Rayburn in my district. Of course, I'm sure you're familiar with the history of the national forests, but local state governments were assured that by providing land that could not be taxed and would not be used for commercial purposes, that the U.S. Forest Service would share 25% of the proceeds of the timber harvesting with the local government. Back in the 80s, for example, Sabine County had $1.6 million as their shared portion, very rural county. But in recent years, it's dropped as low as 60,000. And then with the so-called stewardship program, I know it's, according to Mr. Westerman, it's been helpful in Arkansas, but in East Texas, it seems to be used to hide money from being shared with local government. We've run into problems where a culvert is, a bridge goes down, a culvert becomes impassable, that it's as if the U.S. Forest Service likes the area being unable to traverse for local residents. We have boat ramps that have ceased being used, and it took over 4 months, but we got a response, quote, "The boat ramp is not sustainable from a structural or financial perspective," and that, quote, "using volunteers is neither safe nor practical." So when you have, and we don't, in case you're not familiar, we don't have any sequoias, redwoods, we got pine trees. And newer pine trees actually sequester more carbon, if you're not familiar. And so it ends up being one of our best renewable resources. 20, 25 years, you can plant pine trees and they're back in East Texas. They can be harvested. The older they get, the less carbon they sequester. But it just seems that regardless of the administration, the U.S. Forest Service is doing a great disservice to East Texas and other places. The trees are not being harvested. The resource is not being renewed. And we had a deputy in San Augustine County chase a criminal into the national forest, but stopped in order to get permission, and he was in hot pursuit. I think it was about 5 days later, after lots of screaming by a lot of us. Someone was sent from Arizona to come check things out, and was surprised to find the most sophisticated marijuana growing area that they'd ever experienced. But because of the lack of assistance from the U.S. Forest Service, aiding and abetting the getaway of those who constructed the marijuana growing service, they got a little ahead of the game of it being legalized. They were free to go to some other national forest and again continue to engage in criminality. So we haven't gotten a whole lot of help nor a lot of cooperation out of the U.S. Forest Service. And if we get an administration so amenable, I'm going to be pushing hard to get land given back to local communities so that they don't continue in their struggle just to survive because the U.S. Forest Service has become so blasé about doing what it originally agreed to do. I realize I've got 10 seconds left and haven't arrived at a question, but I wanted to make sure that you knew how unpalatable the U.S. Forest Service has become in East Texas, and we're hoping that we can bring it to an end and turn about very quickly and helping the local area instead of hurting it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I'd give the witnesses an opportunity to respond if they'd like to, but if not, we'll proceed.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't realize I'd made a question there. So, yeah, thanks for extending my time, Chair.
My pleasure.
I would like to respond because I think it's the points that you brought up are very important, Congressman. And, you know, I would say all of our leaders in the field pride themselves on their relationships that they have with their state and local partners. But it's not always perfect, and we can do better. And so it's important that, you know, we heard your concerns, and I can commit that, you know, we will work on those in Texas. You know, I think our district managers and our forest supervisor there are always going to be wanting to improve their relationships. I can assure you of that.
But you understand when someone's in hot pursuit, taking 5 days to give permission is really not helpful, right? And when you shut down the boat ramps that would help provide, you know, fishing tournaments, things like that, some source for the economy, and you continue to shut them down, shut down camping areas, that's not what the locals consider to be extremely cooperative. You get that, right?
Yes, I understand what you're saying, Congressman.
Well, we'd love to hear a better response than, no, it's just not going to work out.
Aren't you glad that I gave the witnesses an opportunity to respond?